I wonder if you've come across this method. We do a lot of evenings for parents on what are the ways in which parents can support the learning of maths of their children. So we talk about how and why the teaching of mathematics is changing, and then we talk about all the kinds of everyday fun activities that parents can be doing with kids when they're cooking, when they're shopping, when they're driving in the car, when they're playing board games or whatever, that will support the learning of kids. But along the way, I also talk about some of the different methods, and that when lots of the parents were at school, there was one way to do a problem. It was the teacher's way or the textbook's way, and more were saying, if you've got a method that works for you, it's mathematically appropriate, it doesn't take till Christmas, then go for it. And here's one of the methods that's emerging. I wonder if you're finding this in your classroom. And it's a front-end method. So a child asked to work this out can start with the front end. 700 subtract 200, what's that? 500, yep. 50 subtract 70, what's that? Negative 20 or minus 20. 3 subtract 8, minus 5 or negative 5. So what have we got? 500 subtract 20 is 480, subtract 5, 475. And if you've never seen that method before, it's a pretty nice method. Now you might say, oh, but the kids need to understand about negative numbers. And yes, they do, but my experience is because of calculators, children are much more aware of negative numbers. And lots of kids, having discovered that method or heard it from a friend, will take it on board. Notice the other nice thing about it is they're talking about 50 subtract 70. They're respecting the place value. And not, as we were taught, and maybe lots of kids are still taught, 3 subtract 8 can't do. We were told can't do, and then in year 7 you're told, oh, well, you can do it, and the answer's negative 5. So I really like that method, and it's becoming more and more common. Not that I'm saying everyone should use that method, but if kids are exposed to it and in a classroom where different methods are valued, some kids will take that on board. One of the things I quite often do is wear a pedometer to count my steps, because it's a wonderful tool for getting students to think about mental computation. And I'll sometimes go into a classroom and say to the kids, this is how many steps I've done so far today, 2,754 or whatever. How many more steps would it take to reach 10,000? Because I don't know if you know, but they say that a healthy adult should be doing 10,000 steps a day. And it's quite a nice task. And I usually give kids pedometers to wear themselves, so we've got a number of different figures to work with. It makes it more personal, of course. But I was in a classroom and I was working with a group. We weren't doing anything to do with pedometers, but just before lunch, because what I typically do, I go and work with 3 different groups in the school in a particular day, and it was just before lunch, and I said to this class, I've got a problem for you, and I don't expect you to do it now, but I'd love to talk to your teacher at the end of the day and hear that someone was able to work this out. And what had happened was, at that stage I'd done 2,124 steps. And I said to the class, how many more steps would I need to do 10,000? And I said, I want to leave that with you and hear about your work on it later on in the day. Anyway, one boy put up his hand, this particular boy, and he said, I know what it is, it's 7,876. And a couple of other kids said, that's what I got. Now these were a grade 1-2 class. I wasn't anticipating that. I was expecting that maybe 1 or 2 of them by the end of the day would work out a way. And as he described his method, I reproduced it there as an empty number line. So he basically said, well, you think of 2,124, and I knew if you added 6, you get to 2,130, and another 70 will get you to 2,200, and so on. He's describing all of this in his head. So the answer is 7,876. And some of the other kids said, yeah, I did it that way too. It's exciting when we challenge kids.